Dear church, let's talk about being the new preacher. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm excited. We've got an old regular, Jake Sledge, Jake the Snake, Jake the Great, my good friend, former co-worker, and now the preacher at the Bullard Church of Christ. It's kind of surprising that I even asked you. I had to swallow a lot of pride to have you on because I'm still not happy with you leaving us at Oldham Lane and leaving the dream team with Blake.
Yes.
But I am very happy for you in all seriousness, doing a great work in Bullard, Texas, where you grew up. That's your hometown. They asked you to come back and be the preacher there. That's really cool. So I wanted to have you on mainly for selfish reasons, So the podcast subject today is really just so I could get you on here and get to see you again. I know we talk on the phone quite a bit, but we don't get to see each other as much because Bullard's about 4 hours from Abilene, 5 hours from Abilene?
About 4.5, 5, yeah.
Yeah, so we hadn't seen you a whole lot, but it's good to see you on this and good to know that you're doing well and kind of catch us up. I think we've had a lot of comments and questions from viewers and listeners say, what happened to Jake? He's not on as much anymore. And so tell us a little bit about what's transpired since, I guess, June of last year.
Yep, we moved here and I started preached the first time that first Sunday in June. So coming up on a year, grew up in the Tyler area and graduated, went to high school out here, was at this congregation during those years. And, I'm sitting at the desk in the office of Johnny Anders and many others who've come before me. And so I wasn't looking to leave Oldham Lane. It was a hard decision, but I'm glad I'm here. And it's still kind of unbelievable to me that I'm here and that I'm not at Oldham Lane. Like you said, we had you have a wonderful team now, but we had a wonderful team then. And I think God has really blessed the Oldham Lane congregation, and I think he's been doing a great thing here as well. And so it's, to me, an interesting case study in how you can be in a good place and everything is great and you're not looking to leave, but a window may open and you've got to decide, is that something I need to do? And for me, I was 45 when I made that decision last year. And, it was a place I knew, a good place to go to. And I always knew since my senior year of high school, wanted to be in ministry. So for me, it was this, if it's ever going to happen, this is probably the time to do this. You're not getting younger. This is a really good time to probably do that, if ever. Had I not done that, I was happy with what I was doing, where I was at and everything. So it would have been fine. But I had to make myself, I wanted to do it and I didn't. You had that tension, but I had to make myself do it because that's kind of different for me to take such a big leap and move my family into that whole new beginning. It was a lot. And Joyce was very supportive. She loves Abilene, had a lot going on there. And so she had to leave a lot, but she wanted to, because she wanted me to be able to do this. And so it's something I had to really make myself do.
I remember our initial discussions when you brought it to my attention that, that Bullard had contacted you, that you were thinking about this. And of course, some of the things that I was thinking was, well, can they compensate you? Are you going to move your kids? Because at the time, you've got 4 children, two of them starting in junior high. Is that a move you want to make at this point in your life? Do you want to go to being the preacher instead of the involvement minister? And we had a good thing going at Oldham Lane, so we were talking about all those things and discussing kind of what that would look like. And I think we both agreed, and Blake too. I think we all agreed that if you're going to make a move like this one makes sense. that you're
Yeah.
going to your
Yeah.
hometown where you grew up, the congregation you grew up in. It's a
Yeah.
it's a thriving area. Bullard is a very an area that's growing rapidly in the Tyler region. So you had a lot of pluses there. That if you're going to make a move, this one seemed to make the most sense. Talk a little bit about the transition for your family and how, because all they had ever known was Abilene, your kids. So I
Yeah.
mean, talk about that a little bit. How difficult or easy was that?
It was hard on all the kids. None of them wanted to move. They had lots of friends at church and at school, were ingrained there. And that was something that I think I'm basically past it now, but I felt guilt over that for a long time because people had moved for me, and that feels selfish. And I knew what we were doing was a good thing, but I didn't have to do it. It's not like I had to go find another job. So that was difficult for me, and it was difficult for them. So they're almost finished with their first year of school. Our two younger ones in fifth grade and third grade, they have transitioned much easier. Our seventh and eighth grader, it's been a slower process. It's been more difficult because they're adolescents. It's different, but they're involved in some sports and other activities. And the youth minister has done a wonderful job on all the things that he does. And so it just takes longer for them. I know that time will come where they feel just fully ingrained here. And I think they're more there than perhaps I feel, because I feel I feel the responsibility of that, but they're doing well. They're wonderful girls, and they are making friends. They're doing good in the activities that they're in, doing great in school. And but it's different. They still miss their friends. Thankfully, they've been able to go back a few times and see them, and able to keep in touch through phone and that sort of thing. So Joyce was excited about it, but at the same time, she had a lot of history built up and things she had done. And you're coming to a place where I knew people, but she didn't know anybody.
Right.
And so she was literally starting over. And in terms of making friends and feeling connected to the community, a job, it was a type of job change for her. And so, but it was also an opportunity, what she wanted, to not have so much going on, to be able to do a job where she can kind of clock in, clock out, and the hours worked out real well. She can pick up the kids, be mama, and have more time to work in the church and do things, which she's been finding more opportunities, and I think places where she's been needed.
Yeah.
And so it's worked out well, but it was a hard transition for her too.
Well, talk a little bit about, and for those that are tuning in, it might be helpful, especially guys that are picking up their family and moving to a new work, or moving into preaching that they haven't done previously. Talk about the discussions you had as a family once this became a reality, that hey, this is going to happen. I mean, we're going to take the job and we're going to move. Talk about kind of the transition period and how you guys handled that as husband and wife, and talking with the kids, and just different things that went on to make it as smooth as possible. Maybe some pointers, suggestions, tips, maybe things you wish you hadn't have done, but just talk about that transition and how you handled that.
Well, the timing of kids in school was something of a concern. At one point, we were thinking it might happen faster, where they could finish the last 6 or so weeks of school here and kind of make some friends at the end. But I think it probably worked out best where we were here for the summer and they got to finish the school year with their friends back there and then start a new school year here. The kids never wanted to move. And so Joyce did a wonderful job. And I would say the wife can be a really big help here, because she was able to see it from a different angle, from a mother's angle, a wife's angle, from understanding that this was yes, we were serving God there, but this was another calling, a new place to serve God and to do the Lord's work here. And she, I think, did a very good job communicating that, where I don't think that I always did. And I think maybe because um, just the feelings I had, the mixed feelings I had of mainly the kids and all them moving because of me, and
Hmm.
kind of feeling, I mean, in some ways bad about it. And I mean, I wanted to come and we were coming, but there's a sense of you kind of feel bad about it, or whatever, for their sake.
Right.
Um, but we had to talk positively about it and talk about new beginnings. And the reality is, all growing up through school, they've had friends move every year, all the time.
Sure.
They've been through that from that side. So I said, essentially, someone's moving. If you have a friend, someone is going to move at some point. It's going to be you or them.
Right.
And all your life, it's been them. You've had several friends move on. This time, it's you moving. And, we moved around. I went to White House Middle School about 10 or so miles from here, and we moved to Bullard High School. And so I had that transition. In middle school, I was more extroverted and all that. When I got to high school, adolescence and all that, I knew one kid here from church, and I was really shy for a while. It took me a while to kind of get used to things, and but I loved it here at the same time. And I knew they were coming from a great school to a great school.
Yes.
Bullard is about roughly half the size of the Wiley, Abilene Wiley district, and so I knew both were good and things were going to be fine as far as that goes. Um, we had the summer, and so we made sure we tried to spend time together at home, spend time to go just explore and do things, be together. So that was helpful, and do things with some church people as well, to try to make friends. The youth group is not as big as it was at Oldham Lane, but there's some wonderful kids here. And Kinley, our youth minister, is amazing. I mean, I think of Blake and Luke, and I put them way at the top, and I put Kinley up there with them.
Yeah.
I mean, and he and Matt both could go preach anywhere full time if they wanted to, and
Sure.
Kinley could do full time youth ministry if he wanted to. I mean, just super talented spiritual guys, and so we're thankful to have them. Matt Perkins is our involvement deacon, and so I think talking openly with your kids, but at the same time, like Debbie McCoy, one of the elders' wives there at Oldham Lane, she told Joyce, "Hey, when we were moving, my dad just said we're moving, and that was it." I mean, so you've got that too, and you've got kids who are in ministry or military or whatever job related to the economy, and they're moving all the time.
Yeah.
And so it was different for us, but I tried to help them understand people move all the time. I moved a lot growing up just in this area, but I like to stay in one place. So I don't know. I don't even know why we moved around growing up. So I like to be in one place and kind of stay there, essentially forever. So,
Well, I know that when we were moving, we moved to Batesville, Arkansas, which wasn't a real big move because we were living outside of Batesville. So that wasn't big. But we moved to Missouri, and that was about 4 hours from home, 4.5 hours from home. And so my kids were really small then. My oldest was in kindergarten, so that one wasn't a major upheaval for my family. But moving to Oldham Lane, my kids were about the same age as your kids. And,
Yeah.
we had discussions about, we value your input. We know that this is not something that that you want to do necessarily, and we sympathize with that. However, we feel that this is the best thing for our family, and so we're making this move. You mentioned Debbie. Her dad was Jimmy Jividen, who
Yeah.
many people know was a preacher, a very valuable preacher to the Brotherhood. But him saying that, I mean, that's one way to handle it. I think ultimately, though, what you're saying is that you guys know what's best for the family. We're
Yeah.
going to do this. We're going to do this, and you're going to be, I think, in the long run, appreciative that we did. It's funny. I guess your third oldest, Angelia. I remember her
Yeah.
words. I'd rather live in a garage than move to Bullard, Texas.
Yes.
The funny things that our kids say. But Kids are they adapt and adjust so well, and I know yours have
They
and
do.
will continue to do so. Talk a little bit though about your adjustment because the job that you had at Oldham Lane was valuable, being the involvement and outreach minister. But in a lot of ways, it wasn't time sensitive necessarily. You
Yeah.
weren't working on a deadline all the time.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest difference. But talk a little bit about the transition and how that's been to the pulpit and being on a weekly basis, having to come up with lessons and working on that deadline.
I've always loved preaching. In fact, I preached my first sermon here at Bullard, this congregation, as a high schooler. But and I've preached a lot at Oldham Lane and other places, but I'd never done it week to week to week to week. And so I remember Blake and I would talk about when we would fill in at Oldham Lane. We always felt like it was hard because you're doing one hit sermons.
Yes.
And one shot. And so I liked preaching, but I always liked the opportunity to teach because I got a long period of time to develop a series. And so preaching is, different in some ways from teaching a class, but I love being able to line out that spiritual diet of a series. But then there's that week to week pressure and tension to get it done. My biggest challenge has been I'm still, even though I've done so much of it, when you're doing it week to week, it's just different,
Yeah.
And so I'm not fast enough yet. I feel like I want to be faster at it, but there's that tension between being faster at it and getting it done but not compromising study and quality.
No doubt.
And you've been doing it for about 20 years now, so you've got that system down a lot faster. And at the same time, I love the study part of it. And so I'm working through Romans now. We're about halfway through on Sunday mornings, and breaking it down in 12 weeks. Well, you're like, well, how can you do justice to Romans in 12 weeks? But I don't want to do it all year because I think that's maybe too long for people. So you've always got that in balance, that how long do you do this series? Maybe it's 4 weeks, maybe it's 6 or 12. So we're doing it in 12. Well, that means you've got big chunks to cover each week.
Sure.
What do you do? Like next week is chapter 9. Yesterday was chapter 8. Well, how do you do chapter 8 in 25 minutes?
That's tough. Yeah.
You can't. So I've been going about 30, and that's a little longer than what we want to do. But you always feel like you're maybe thorough on some things, and you can only pick what you can to fill in that time. But you're studying through, for example, chapter 8, and it's so interesting, and there's so much to study just on that because it makes you think of this, and it makes you go here, and you're looking at this word and different meanings about this thought here. But at some point, you can't just study forever.
Right.
You have to preach the next one next Sunday, so you have to figure out, how do I rein this in? And that's the biggest challenge, because the study is fun.
Yes.
But you have to rein it in.
Yes.
And then you've got to start working on the next one. And so for me, my goal is Monday, Tuesday is AM, Wednesday, Thursday is PM. And then if I've got a class, then that's on top of that. So one of the benefits I have is on the second Sunday PM of the month, one of the brothers preaches. And then on the fourth Sunday night, one of the young men, the youth boys, preach.
That's helpful.
So, well, it is, and they do a great job, and we enjoy that. That fourth Sunday, the boys all lead the worship service, and it's great. It's happened twice where we've had 2 months in a row. The adult guy who was preaching got sick, so that Sunday morning I find out, and so that afternoon I'm like finishing up that sermon to get to preach that night. So,
Right.
but so that's going to happen. That's fine. But so that buys me a little time where I can try to get ahead.
Right.
When I don't have that PM. So you've got to look for little nooks and crannies when you can do that. I drop the kids off in the morning and then I come to the office. But in the summer, I've got to take advantage of the fact that they're not going to school. So I can come in earlier. Well,
Yeah.
that just gives me a little more margin to get ahead.
Yeah.
And things to consider are your slides and that sort of thing. And I do slides last. So sometimes I end up doing those later on because I just do those typically at the very end when everything's done, and I do them alongside my kind of working through my outline and do them. I think the balance of study versus wrap it up and get it written and get it done has been the biggest challenge for me. It always was, but now it's weekly.
Yeah.
But I use an Excel spreadsheet, and each tab at the bottom is a different year, and I just plug in the different series I want to do, and it helps me have a long-term view over a few years to line out different books and topics and kind of sequence those in a way I feel like is a good balance. So I'm not just doing all books or all topical,
Right.
get hopefully a nice balance, old and new, that sort of thing. I've not preached a whole lot as far as series in Old Testament. And so when you look at Old Testament, you're like, well, how do you do, Genesis in a sermon series?
Right.
So things like that are a challenge. And so you've got to figure out how can you build that in, and then how do you design it, when you're planning a series. But I enjoy doing that. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But everything takes time. That's the thing. And you were always good at managing this because everything takes time.
Yeah.
So that request, that visit, whatever it is, it's all taking away from your sermon prep time.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have to remember that's not all you do. It may be the main thing you do, but it's not all you do. But you have to balance the pop-ins, the requests, the saying, hey, I'll help with that, the whatevers, with I must get this core piece done of my job, as well as the visiting, the contacting people. Because I think there's two sides to it, the sermon prep and delivery, and then that ministerial side, the people side, where you're with your people during church and visiting and contacting them and that sort of thing. I would say those are the two big pieces of the job. And that's a lot. For a lot of people that joke, that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a tremendous amount.
Yeah, the whole joke about you only work one day a week, if they only knew, right?
Yeah.
I think the key is finding that rhythm. And everybody's rhythm's different, but what it takes to get it done. I know for me, my rhythm is starting earlier in the day. If I can get to the office at 5:30, I'm an early morning person anyway. That helps my rhythm and makes me feel like I'm getting a jump on things and getting ahead. But it's also, like you said, a fine, delicate balance because, at the end of the day, if you are not prepared on Sunday, there's not a lot of grace for how much time you spent during the week visiting and in the hospitals and all that kind of stuff. So, you've got to put people first. I think people are more important than sermons. But at the end of the day, you've also got to learn to say no to some things because this has to get done. And, on Sunday, people still want, to be fed, and they should be. They should desire that and they should get that, but it is definitely a delicate balance. I
would say if somebody, your series that you did on 10 questions for 10 preachers, you asked about people's rhythm, their routine.
Right.
And that was really helpful because you're hearing from 10 well-experienced guys, and every one of them was different.
Yes.
And then I think I did the last one, or one of them was with you. So people will get to hear from you as well. And that's a great resource for people to go back to and listen to. I really appreciated that series.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, like you said, finding your routine, especially when you have young kids at home, because I know my
Yeah.
routine has changed dramatically since
Yeah.
I'm an empty nester. I have way more time than I ever did. I would come into the office when my kids were in school, and everything was revolving around being done at a certain time, either to pick them up or to go to a soccer game or whatever it is. And now my schedule is wide open as far as that's concerned. Now, you always
Yeah.
fill it with other things, but I don't have to worry about I need to get done by this time because I got to go pick up the kids or they've got an activity or whatever. So, it does. You adapt and adjust, you figure it out, but that is not an easy thing, especially at a congregation like Bullard where, you're wearing multiple hats, right? So you've got a youth minister or associate minister that's part-time. You've got a lot of deacons that help out, but you're the only one at the office every day. So you're kind of handling phone calls and visits and things like that all by yourself, right?
Yeah, and the elders they do a wonderful job on calls and visits as well. A lot of times, especially still being new here, if there's something I don't know about a family dynamic or what's going on with health or whatever, 99% of the time they already know, and that to me is amazing. They are very well in touch with the people, and usually I don't know something that they don't already know, but we're in contact all the time, so we're keeping each other up to date. So I think that's been a real asset. And Matt Perkins, who was actually got the ball rolling with me coming here. He instigated it. It's his fault I'm here.
We blame
but
Matt.
Yeah, but he's our deacon over involvement. And one of the things that the elders here uh, were clear about was we need to improve in involvement, member involvement, community involvement. And that background that I had was one of the big things that they were interested in. They wanted me to bring that to the table here. And so it's really neat getting to work with Matt, who's a deacon over that. And he and I, and then Kinley's in on that team as well, to be able to work on involvement. We've already done multiple things, and Matt's kind of the point man on everything, and it's been a great team. But yeah, you're right; it adds other things. And me being here at the office, there's things that Matt might need done. So I can take care of that for him
Yeah,
because he's coaching and he has two little kids,
right.
and he might be teaching school and coaching and then hitting the road for a game and getting back at midnight, that kind of thing. So I want to be and need to help him out on things that I can here at the office.
Absolutely.
But Matt also is such a good example of a deacon because when he gets a break at school, he's shooting out some text messages, he's asking questions, he's working on things every chance he gets because he's got to juggle that time as well, because he doesn't get to sit at an office and work on
Exactly.
ministry.
Yeah, that and for our listeners and viewers, Matt is another piece of that puzzle that made it all fit together for you and made the transition easier because Matt married one of our elders' daughters and
Yeah.
attended Oldham Lane for a while with Ryan, his wife, and then they moved to Bullard so that he could coach. And then there you are. So you had that familiarity. He's a song leader
Yeah.
and a preacher as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have a valuable asset there that you got to take advantage of by moving there as well. So it kind of reunited you folks. Hey, as we're wrapping everything up, let's end with this. Any tips, suggestions for the new guy, the guy that is just stepping into the role of a preacher, or maybe he's preached before, but he's moving to a new work? What tips, suggestions do you have for that guy?
I would say first and foremost, don't try to be somebody. Be you. Don't try to be something you're not, someone you're not. Your job is to come in, preach good, solid, wholesome, encouraging, challenging, just good, feed them well.
Yeah.
There's plenty of time for the tough stuff, the controversial stuff. You've got all the time in the world for that. Come in and just feed them good meals in terms of your sermon. Don't go so short where they're wondering if you got any substance. Don't go so long where they're trying to leave. Just feed them well, build them up, and don't make it about you. And also love on the people. That was one of the things we always talked about at Oldham Lane where, we experienced the growth that we did. And, we would talk about it and think, well, what's the secret sauce? And we would say, we're just trying to teach the truth and love on people.
Yeah.
And I think that's the secret. Don't try to be somebody. You're not a celebrity. You're not a hotshot. Be their preacher.
Yes.
But here's the thing. If you'll do that, you eventually will be somebody, but not some kind of big star. You'll be somebody to them.
Yeah.
And that's where God is using you. That's where he'll use you. And that's what you need to be, is to be their preacher. And it's another thing as a new person, you have to, when you move into that role, you have to assume the role as the preacher.
Yeah.
When I was the involvement minister, I really didn't have to worry about someone coming to me to do the funeral. I did a few funerals and worked with you on several. But as the preacher, that's different.
Yeah.
They came to you for everything when we would say, there's all these elders and other ministers, but they're going to go to the preacher. That's just the way it is.
Absolutely.
So you have to just assume that role with humility and faithfulness and be a good steward of that. And just realize that that's just the way it is. They're going to see you maybe differently is the word. Like it or not, fair or not, it is what it is. And you've got to be faithful in that role. And I think as a new preacher, everybody should want to grow numerically because we want to save lost souls.
Sure.
But it's not about tricks and, attractional things to get people. Don't make that your focus. You want to grow numerically because you're growing spiritually, and that's a byproduct or a fruit of growing spiritually. So we talked about at Oldham Lane, and I think it's the truth everywhere is focus on making and growing disciples.
Yeah.
Grow your people spiritually and help make disciples by helping people come to Christ, and people who are growing spiritually, they will make disciples.
No doubt.
So you get that multiplication. So I think that's what you focus on. Focus on a good, steady diet of sermons and a good balance of them, a spiritual diet. Listen to other preachers, but at the same time, be careful with that.
Yeah. Because
you've got to be you. You've got to find your voice, your style, and they want you and your personality.
Right.
And you have to kind of find that maybe in the pulpit as far as a voice, but be you. You're not somebody else. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
And that's what people want and need, and they will love that person if you're genuinely being that God put you there for that reason.
Yeah.
And let him use you.
Very well said. Very well said. And I want to encourage all of our listeners and viewers that if you have a question, you can email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. If you have a specific question for Jake, we'll make sure that he gets it, and I'm sure he would be glad to respond. Jake, thank you so much for being on, buddy. It's good catching up.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Absolutely. And thank you all for tuning in. Spread the word about the podcast. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.